Today we take a quick detour from Mark into the 10th chapter of Matthew. Now, this chapter is all about discipleship, and these are Jesus' final words to the disciples as he's sending them out into the world to do ministry. But this passage can be somewhat confusing, though. It's quite vague and hypothetical, and it uses the pronoun whoever like 5 times in just 2 very short verses. I found myself almost wanting to draw a diagram. We've got the person who's being sent out. We'll call them person A. And then we've got the person that's doing the welcoming. Let's call them person B. So you've got person B welcomes person A, and by doing that, person B is also welcoming Jesus, and then by welcoming Jesus, person B is also welcoming God, and then there's something about prophets, and then cups of water, and it just goes downhill from there. So instead of getting stuck in these transitive properties of welcoming, whenever there's a scenario like this, I like to focus on which character I'm supposed to imagine myself being. Am I person A or am I person B? Well, in the spirit of Lutheran both and theology, I would argue that we are both at different times in our lives. I know, big surprise. Pastor Sam presents 2 different options and then refuses to choose between them, but I can't help it, because there are times when we are the person being welcomed, and there are times when we are called to be the one doing the welcoming. So let's look at both of those possibilities. We'll start with person B, the one who is welcoming the one who is sent out. Now, the first thing that comes to my mind when I imagine being this person is the notion of hospitality. Hospitality was incredibly important during biblical times. There are countless stories in both the Old and the New Testaments of people meeting traveling strangers and insisting that they stay and share a meal and spend the night. And this was due in part to the harsh nature of the region that they lived in, geographically speaking. They lived in the desert where food and shelter and water were often hard to come by. And turning away a stranger in need could very likely spell death for that person. But in today's story, we hear that hospitality has an even greater significance than valuing human life. Jesus tells us that when we welcome someone, we also welcome the person who sent them. And in the case of today's reading, that means welcoming Jesus and welcoming God. But what does that really mean? Does that mean that we're at the door to take Jesus' coat or cloak, I guess it would be, and get him a drink, or that we've made up the guest room so God can crash at our place for the weekend, or maybe it's like that classic painting with Jesus knocking at the door that's been made into oh so many memes. In theory, I think it could mean any of those, but in the bigger picture, welcoming someone is the first step to entering into relationship with them. You can't be in relationship with someone whom you shut out or ignore. You can only be in relationship if you choose to actively engage with and receive them into your life. So when we talk about being person B, we're talking about what it means to be in relationship with Jesus. And that is a relationship that changes and transforms our lives, a relationship in which we are offered grace and forgiveness, healing and salvation, relationship that will support us when we are weak and inspire us when we are strong. God chose to become human in the person of Jesus to restore a broken relationship with humanity, which means that in welcoming, we receive the gift of relationship with God. So now, what about this other character, the one who is being sent out? Well, given what we just talked about, that means that when we are the ones that are sent out, we are, in fact, conveying that same relationship with Jesus to others. Famed theologian Frederick Buechner put it this way: we have it in us to be Christs to one another, to work miracles of love and healing, as well as to have them worked upon us. So just as with these transitive equation of welcoming, there are times when we have the opportunity to receive those who act as Christ, when we are the recipients and we have those miracles of love and healing worked in our lives. And there are times when we have the great privilege of being the one to work those miracles in the lives of others, to be Christ in their lives. But before you feel like that mission is too daunting, remember in the story for today, That Jesus says that even giving a cup of cold water is an act worthy of recognition. Miracles aren't always as spectacular as feeding a massive crowd with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, or healing someone who is blind. Sometimes the small things that we do have a greater impact than we ever could have imagined. Just as a small stone cast into a still pond can send far-reaching ripples, so too can a single act of love, hospitality, justice, kindness send ripples of change into the world. While I was in seminary, I worked as a shelver in the library. It was my job to take all of the books that had been returned and put them back on the shelves, which meant that I was by myself in the vast stacks of our library for extended periods of time. Now, given that I am a very social and extroverted person, it doesn't seem like I would enjoy that kind of job, but I really loved it. It was like a mini escape from the world around me. I was able to listen to podcasts or be alone with my thoughts or just not think, and live into the repetitive yet oddly satisfying work of returning books to their proper places. Now, that being said, though, I couldn't fully repress my social nature. And one of the things that I would do is send pictures of funny or odd book titles to my friends. Titles like How to Survive the Apocalypse, Zombies, Cylons, Faith, and Politics at the End of the World. That was probably one of the wildest ones. Or I also really liked Inked, Choosing God's Mark to Transform Your Life, which was a book all about how to choose the right tattoo. That was a good one as well. I didn't think much of it, except that I was sharing things that I found to be funny with my friends. But after graduation, just as I was about to leave Chicago, I received a letter from a dear friend in the first-year class. And he said that me sending those pictures was evidence of my ability to find joy in the most ordinary of things and to share that joy with others. He said that not many people could find joy in the simple task of putting books back on a shelf, but that I could, and that it was something that he admired and hoped to emulate. I was incredibly touched by his letter, but in addition to being touched, I was also surprised. I had no idea that the simple act of sharing funny book titles could be interpreted as spreading joy in the world. I thought it was just me being silly. It was a far nobler assessment of my activities than I ever would have made myself. So often in life, we don't fully understand the effects that our actions can have. The smallest act of kindness, a smile, a compliment can completely turn someone's day around. So when you hear that we are called to be Christ to one another, don't let that overwhelm you. Being Christ to someone doesn't mean that you have to save or heal or convert them or even inspire them to turn their lives around. It simply means loving them as Jesus first loved you. Now, to be honest, even though I said at the beginning, and I believe that we occupy both of these different roles at different times in our life, I feel far more comfortable when I'm person A, when I'm the one who is being sent out into the world to help and to bless and to minister to others. Maybe it's because I'm a 2 on the Enneagram scale. 2s are considered to be helpers, but I feel way more comfortable being the one offering than receiving. And I don't think I'm alone in that. In part, I think it's because of society's value of that ideal of self-sufficiency, that weird double standard where it's okay to offer help, but you should never be needy enough or weak enough to be the one in need of it. But that makes no sense if you think about it. Because who is going to receive our help if we are all constantly clamoring to be the ones giving and doing for others? You can't be welcomed if there isn't someone there to welcome you. It's a cyclical and symbiotic relationship. This is an interesting time to be talking about welcoming and being welcomed as we continue to emerge from the pandemic. We just recently started welcoming people into the sanctuary for in-person worship again. And it's very likely that you also have begun welcoming people into your homes again and possibly into your personal space bubbles again. It's a very odd feeling to stand closer than 6 feet away from somebody, but I gotta say I missed it. I missed the hugs, I missed the warmth, I missed the intimacy, and so much of the past 15 months has been the opposite of what it means to be welcoming and hospitable. Putting on masks when someone outside of our inner circle appears, stepping back when somebody approaches too quickly, siloing ourselves away from one another, and all of it done for very good reasons. Done out of love and care for our neighbor, to keep each other safe, but it so went against my instinct for how to operate in the world. And now we have the wonderful opportunity to witness the ebb and flow of welcoming on full display, as we welcome others into our own spheres and as we in turn are welcomed into the spheres of others, reestablishing our relationships with one another, listening to one another's stories, the joys and pains, hardships and triumphs that COVID held for each of us. We have the opportunity to minister to one another after this collective trauma that we have all endured, to embody Christ's love for someone and to be the recipient of that love as well. So I invite you today, as you are sent out, you'll notice that the end of the service is not called the leaving section or the thank goodness we can all go home now section. It is called the sending section. So as you are sent out today, I would invite you to carry Jesus' words with you, to know that you have the sacred blessing of bearing Christ to those who need him most. You have the ability to create radiating ripples of change in the world through the simplest acts of love and hospitality. And you also have the blessed opportunity to receive all of that from others, to allow others to act as Christ to you, and to welcome you into their lives. And in this way, we are connected with one another through the ebb and flow, the give and take of loving relationship. Through these acts of welcoming, Jesus is made manifest in our lives, and we discover what it truly means to be the church, to bear and receive Christ's love. Amen.